They said she couldn't do it. They said she was too small, too quiet, not built for the salt and smoke of special warfare. By sunrise, those same voices would be silent. They would not only stop laughing, they would be whispering her name with a kind of reverence you only hear after the impossible is done. Her name was Lieutenant Mara Hale. She was 5'4", narrow-shouldered, and from a flat stretch of land where the wind taught you hell listen. She kept to herself. She did not raise her voice. Her smile was rare, and when it came, it was small and private. She did not demand attention. She earned it. On a damp October morning at the coastal training compound outside Norfolk, the wind came off the Chesapeake like a warning. The compound smelled of salt, dust, and the oil of engines. Candidates moved in clumps. Their boots slapped the wet pavement. Laughter bounced along the firing line, loud, certain. It was a kind of bravado, an echo of confidence they wanted to see in each other. Mara stood at the end of the line with her M24A3. The bolt was clean. The scope had a faint scratch on its rim. She'd wrapped the stock where her hands fit best. Small things mattered to her. Small things made the difference. Her fingers moved over the rifle with the ease of habit. She checked the 0 twice, then a third time. She adjusted for the cold. She tuned the elevation knob like someone tuning the last string of a violin. Behind her, the candidates joked. Petty Officer Tyler Nash smacked his lips and called out an easy tease. "Hey, Lieutenant, you avoid the mud, sweetheart? That rifle better make up for everything else." Laughter. A ripple of derision. Looked good, sounded good. It was the kind of noise that tries to push a person thin. Mara did not respond. She had heard this before. She had heard it from a platoon sergeant who thought a woman belonged in logistics. She had heard it from field medics who told her she was too polite to be dangerous. She had heard it from men who only considered the loudest voice the strongest. What they did not know, what they could not see under her steady, unshowy manner, was that Mara had been learning wind her whole life. Her first lessons were taught under a wide Texas sky. Her grandfather owned a small spread in Jeff Davis County. The sun rose on endless plains. Coyotes prowled the night edges. The wind was an honest teacher there. It told you where dust would lift, where the air was thin, how a sound traveled. Her grandfather had been a Marine scout once. He was a man of few words. He spoke in small, practical sentences. Breathe with the wind, not against it. Read the heat like a book. He showed her how shimmer bent a round's path, how barley waved a little early when the breeze would shift. By 12, she had taught herself patience and the math of falling bullets. She spent summers alone on the ranch long before she ever thought of joining service. She would sit for hours and take shots at long ranges with an old Remington. She learned how to feel the moment when a gust would soften and to synchronize breath with a pause in the world. Later, when she trained at Fort Benning, those old habits turned into discipline. In sniper school, she did not compete for attention. She kept quiet, kept to routine, and slowly crept to the top of the list. Afghanistan taught her something else. Up on a ridge where the air was thin and the wind carved lines into the ground, she made a shot at over 1,200 meters in a crosswind that could break a man's focus. The round landed true. It was a shot the veterans retold without boasting, an example of calm under pressure. Her name traveled up the chain. She became a name on forms and a note in a log. Hale. Precision confirmed. Which is why when Mara reported to the coastal compound, she stood there with the same quiet certainty she had in places where the wind told the truth. Her presence made no one uncomfortable. Her presence made the rifle on her shoulder seem natural, as if she belonged there. The training detail that morning was a compound assault, a simulated hostage rescue inside a rusted industrial mock-up. Teams would clear rooms. Assault elements would cross an exposed courtyard. Snipers provided overwatch. The exercise was straightforward on paper. It was designed to test coordination under stress. It would test the team's nerve and endurance. They added 3 additional hostiles at elevated stations that were not in the original plan. It was supposed to make the scenario harder, realistic. It was supposed to force candidates to improvise, but it also raised the stakes. The assault team would cross 300 meters of open ground at night to reach the objective. If those elevated positions were not identified and suppressed, simulated casualties would be expected. Mara lay prone roughly 700 meters from the mocked compound. A faint moon tried to peer through a sheet of cloud. Her bipod dug into the sand. Her breath matched the rhythm she had owned since childhood. The night scope painted ghostly edges. Silhouettes moved in the dark. Night sounds carried differently here. A distant motor that might be a generator. The slight hiss of the wind as it brushed a metal sheet. Everything was measured. Everything was data. She checked the distance, then dialed for wind drift and drop. The spotter whispered corrections, numbers that would mean little to those who did not practice this language. They were a steady punctuation. Each adjustment was a small decision. Each small decision was a vote for a particular future. She had spent hours learning these votes. On the assault radio, a voice cracked. It was Mitchell. Viper 6, taking simulated fire, unknown position. A pause stretched. The line would have felt different if a man of their experience had been at the line. There was a tension that a laugh could not cover. For a moment, the murmur of braggadocio fell away and real silence took its place. Mara swept the scope a careful arc. Heat shimmer can hide the human form. It can make a man disappear and reappear as the wind plays tricks. She watched the compound's roofline, the crinkled steel vents, the window edges. A small distortion caught her eye near a rooftop HVAC unit. The spotter checked the range again. 1,100 meters. That was outside the comfortable zone for many, but it was her math. She exhaled and let the calculation arrive like a breath she had been saving for hours. Wind, 12 miles per hour, cross. Angle, a slight down. Temperature and humidity checked. Drop, drift, and timing all settled into a tidy set of numbers. She lined a mil dot, settled on a point, and squeezed. The first crack sounded like thunder to some. The radio buzzed a confirmation. Hit. The first elevated threat blinked its status to neutralized. The gunfire in the assault element sighed away like a held breath. The team placed a few more deliberate rounds into predictable spots. A second target staggered, then the third. A man minutes before had joked that her carefulness came from being cautious rather than skilled. The laughter of the line had been a kind of shield. No one was laughing now. Mitchell's voice came back, quieter. 0 simulated casualties. All threats neutralized. Viper 6. Outstanding. The thing about a moment like that is not applause. It is the change that happens in the room. The invisible ledger of assumptions flips. Where doubt had been written, respect starts to appear in ink. It's a quiet, cumulative shift. It is subtle and powerful. It changes the decisions people make the next day. It changes who gets chosen for a cover detail. It changes the story told in the chow hall weeks later. But Mara did not stay for applause. She packed the rifle with calm motions and returned it to its case. She went to the armory to clean the scope. The team room was loud with beer and smoke from the day's bravado. She sat alone and methodical in the armory light. Her hands moved over metal and glass. It was a place of ritual. She believed excellence was an accumulation of such rituals. Her grandfather's voice lived in the cadence of those rituals. Excellence does not argue, it proves. He had said that in a voice that smelled of saddle leather and cigarette smoke. He had known something strict about being measured and about how a person's habits made their future. Mara repeated the calculations in her head, not to prove them to anyone, but to keep them true. She went back to her bunk as night grew thin. She didn't bother changing the fact that people's opinions would mutate. She learned long ago that people would talk. The job was to do. The next day, the instructors threw another curve. The scenario escalated mid-exercise. 3 more positions, hidden, higher, and more exposed, activated. The assault team would have to run across open ground with a time limit. If the snipers did not pin the high positions, simulated casualties were expected. The pressure tightened as some of the candidates' shoulders